Welcome everyone to the Thriving from the Start Network's first event of 2025. We're very excited to have you all here today, and we look forward to exploring the topic of self-comparison, particularly in the context of social media. So before we get started, I would just like to take a moment to acknowledge the traditional owners of the various lands from upon which we all meet today and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. My name is Kate Buckley and I'm a lawyer at Clayton Utes in Melbourne, as well as a proud member of the CMHAA's Early in Careers Committee. The Corporate Mental Health Alliance of Australia is a business-led and expert-guided member organisation dedicated to providing mentally healthy workplaces for all people. The Early in Careers Committee, or the EIC, is a subsection of the CMHAA. The EIC committee was founded to specifically support those starting off their career, given the particular challenges these groups face to ensure the maintenance of good mental health and wellbeing. The Thriving from the Start Network is an initiative from the EIC committee, which seeks to bring young professionals together to help achieve that goal. We're really excited to have you all here today to kick off our 2025 event. But before we go any further, I also encourage you to take 30 seconds to scan the QR code now on the screen to help shape our Thriving from the Start events moving forward. So tell us what topics you'd like us to unpack to help you thrive at work. So with the rise of instant email, work messenger platforms, smartphones, social media and LinkedIn, success is often publicly shared and the news is spread quickly. This contributes to a moving, unspoken expectation to present a polished and upward-moving facade. While these platforms can benefit young professionals, they can also fuel unhealthy self-comparison and make it difficult to separate genuine progress from external pressure. I know from my own experience, while I'm happy to see that one of my co-workers or my uni friends has received a promotion via LinkedIn, sometimes it can be hard to not reflect internally and wonder, why haven't I received that same promotion, or why haven't I moved as quickly as they have in the same time frame? So I find that these experiences can often fuel my own imposter syndrome and make me question my own skills and capability where it may not precisely be warranted. As a young professional, it's important to shift away from this unhealthy self-comparison, to not only allow for the building of confidence in their own paths, but to foster a greater sense of satisfaction and motivation in careers. Our goal today and the panel today is to help you to assist in developing a healthier approach to evaluating your career, understanding what to expect from change and progress, and exploring practical strategies for maintaining professional and social connections without letting comparison dictate your sense of achievement. So we are delighted to be joined today by two guest speakers who I will introduce to you now. Our first guest speaker is Sabina Read, psychologist, speaker, media commentator and podcast host of the Human Better podcast. And we also have with us today Ben Gunn, co-founder and chief revenue officer at Fabulate. So thank you very much to Sabina and Ben for joining us today. But before we get started, I would like to point out to our audience that we do have the chat function available. So please feel free to contribute to the discussion and post any questions you have throughout the session. We will put some of these questions to our panelists at the end of the formal discussion if we have some time remaining. So, Sabina, I think we might start with you just to help us set the scene. Would you be able to explain to us what comparisonitis is and why young professionals may be particularly vulnerable to it?
Sure. Hi, everyone, and thanks, Kate. Obviously, comparisonitis is not a diagnostic label. It's something that it's another hashtag that us psychologists tend to come up with to describe common and universal behaviour. And obviously it's talking about how we compare ourselves to one another. And although we're talking today to early careers people, we know that comparing ourselves to others has happened since the dawn of time and happens across the lifespan. And it was first probably studied, social comparison theory was studied in the 50s, and we've been looking at it ever since, and probably before then as well. So really what it's talking about is how do I compare myself to others? And we can compare upwards. In other words, we can compare ourselves to people who appear to be doing better than us, or we compare ourselves downwards, comparison downwards, to people who appear, and the appear part here is important, to perhaps not be doing as well as us. And in both directions, there are possible pros and cons that occur. So if we're comparing to people that appear to be doing better than us, it can be motivational, it can be inspirational, it can give us guidance, or it can make us feel demotivated, less than, and lead to a sense of apathy or procrastination. Likewise, when we compare to people who appear to be doing not as well as us, it can give us that quick sense of, it's almost like a Band-Aid fix or a dopamine high sometimes. Whew, I've dodged that bullet. I'm not as bad as the next person here, so I must be doing okay. I'm still going to keep swimming. But can also lead us to ruminating and unhelpful behaviours. So that's really what comparisonitis is. And I think it's particularly relevant. You guys don't need me to tell you this, but it's particularly relevant in our early careers, and particularly in our 20s, when we're still trying to discover who we are. And look, we're still trying to do that in our 50s as well, just so you know. But until you get there, let's focus on the age and the age and stage you're at. You're trying to sort out who am I, what matters to me, what are my values, what's my purpose, who are my people, how will I know if I'm going to succeed, what do other people think of me, and on it goes. So it makes sense that in our 20s we're particularly vulnerable to this comparisonitis idea, although, as I say, it doesn't end on your 30th birthday, let's put it that way.
Thanks, Sabina. So how does this constant comparison affect mental health, particularly in terms of burnout or anxiety amongst young people?
Well, before we even get on to that, Kat, I mean, let's just go back and look at the big picture here. What is the purpose of work? Why are we working? And there are so many reasons. And the first initial answer you might give is to pay the bills. But of course, that's not really the main driver for a lot of us, or it's only one of the big drivers for most of us. We work for a sense of autonomy. We work for a sense of purpose. We work for a sense of mastery, that is to get better at something. And so I think in the context of this conversation, it's really helpful to take a bird's eye view about why we're working and what it's about. So we don't fall into the hole of comparing to others who may well be moving towards different goals that are not meaningful to us. They may have different values that don't align with our values. And so comparing ourselves to others who are on a different trajectory, maybe work in a different sector, but intrinsically have different drivers, have different values, have different needs, is going to set us possibly on a negative spiral. And we need to come back. I remember someone once said to me, and it stuck with me, stick to your own yoga mat. And I like that saying. It's easy when you're on the yoga mat, metaphorically or literally, to be thinking, well, how come she's able to bend her leg over her neck? And why does she look good in her leggings, and I don't think I look the same as her. But when we do that, we're missing the point of why we've turned up to yoga class. So I think that's probably a good metaphor to bring with us to the workplace. Stick to your own yoga mat if particularly you're looking at others and it's making you feel less than. Now, you're asking, Kate, why might it affect our mental health? Well, put simply, the way we think impacts the way we feel, and the way we feel impacts the way we behave. I'm just going to say it again. The way we think impacts the way we feel, and the way we feel impacts the way that we behave. So if I'm thinking when I'm scrolling and I see someone who's got a promotion or who is working from under a palm tree in Bali but looks to be living their best life, if I think, I'll never have that, or that's not me, or I wish that was me, or this isn't fair, those kinds of thoughts will lead to feelings of frustration, depletion, less than, and they can build into something more serious in the way of mental health concerns, anxiety or depression. Even when we're not using clinical terms like anxiety and depression, they can lead to a sense of apathy and procrastination or rumination. Or on the flip side, we can start pedaling harder to try and arrive at where we perceive this other person has arrived, or whatever their post is sharing. And that can lead to burnout, because we can work in unhelpful ways. We think we're being productive, but really we're paddling so hard, but it's not moving us closer towards our goals. And it's not aligned with our intrinsic values. And by intrinsic, of course, I'm talking about the things that matter to us, the things that drive our behavior, not because we're getting an external reward. An external reward is a like on social media. An external reward is a gold star or a promotion or a new title or more money or external sort of accolades. But intrinsic drivers, I'm learning here, I'm growing, I'm making a difference, or I understand my impact. And you might not be Mother Teresa and you might not be building an orphanage, but you realize and you understand that the role that you're playing in your job is impacting others in small and large ways. And that might be that you're impacting the person you work for positively, or it might be that your reach is greater. But the scale is probably less important here as knowing what drives you and coming back to that, because comparisonitis is really about looking externally for validation and guidance. And I do believe, and I have said many times over my decades as a psychologist, that we all know more of we all know more what we need more and less of in our lives. When we're still enough, when we come back to self, I think we have a wisdom that lets us know what we need to dial up and what we need to dial down. And when we're comparing to others, we lose track of that because we're almost abdicating that responsibility, that knowledge, that knowing, and that wisdom to someone else as if they know more about what I need and what's going to help me progress. So I think the short answer is we can see in mental health terms, FOMO, depression, anxiety, rumination, burnout, or you could just chuck in the towel and think this is too hard. This ain't for me. So all of those outcomes aren't going to make us feel good, and they're not going to move us closer to where we probably ultimately want to get to.
Thanks, Sabina. And I really like that comparison about sticking to my own yoga mat. I'll have to keep that one in mind as I go along. So thank you very much for giving us that brief overview of what comparisonitis is. I think now might be a good time just to move into the Menti that we've prepared. So everyone, if you just want to scan the QR code here, I'll maybe just give everyone a minute or so to join, and then I will show you all the results. The questions are focused on your own feelings of comparisonitis and self-comparison. All right, I might just stop sharing my screen now and have a look at the Menti.
And what are we learning here?
Oh, sorry, are you able to see my screen?
Yes, so you've got there. Do you experience comparisonitis? If so, how often? Once a week, most of you have said. Some of you have said once a day, then once a month, once or twice a year. So really what we're seeing here, and I'm not looking at this statistically, but we're getting an idea that at least, mostly once a week, but for many of you, once a day, you're comparing yourself to others. And I think that's enough for us to know that this is the universal experience, which we knew anyway. And for those of you who are only doing it once or twice a year, I'm actually not going to comment, because if I say good for you, then I'm also affirming that behavior. And I think, let's just be honest. What this is about is acknowledging that life is messy. This is a universal experience. All of us, every one of us at some time has wondered, am I on the right path? Am I doing what I should be doing? Am I good enough? Am I doing what's required here? Do I have clarity? Do I understand what's going on for me? So I think that's a pretty good, and some of you are still responding. So the once a day looks like, I feel like I'm calling the Melbourne Cup now, but the once a day is coming in very close second around as it takes around the bend or whatever happens at the Melbourne Cup. So to this, I would say, really the question is, when I see another person's success, are we sort of done with the mentee? I'm still banging on now, or do we need to keep menting?
Sabina, I might just move on to the next slide just to see what the second response is.
Okay. If you experience comparisonitis, in what ways does it impact your well-being?
Oh, is everyone able to respond to the second question?
Okay, so there's a part 2 question here.
There is a part 2 question. Yes. Oh, there we go. We're getting the answers in now. Not quite sure what SADG means.
It sounds like a combination of sad and
it's a very emotional word. Great.
Maybe
here we go.
we've all felt sad. So there's anxiety, there's stress, a negative spiral. You feel like giving up, insecurity. You feel bad. You feel depressed. You feel exhausted. You feel panic. You feel grief. You feel self-doubt. You feel sadness. You feel incompetent. You feel like you're falling behind. It stops you from focusing. There's self-doubt. You're overwhelmed. You're not good enough. There's a loss of confidence. And look, let's not forget that all of you or many of you feel sad as well at times. So
yes,
I think that's a pretty powerful mentee response. You're only all giving us one word. It's a snapshot response. Look, even things are coming up here, body dysmorphia, causing anxiety, self-doubt, you feel small, you feel disappointed, you're falling behind, you feel bad, there's low self-esteem, there's sadness, low self-worth, you feel tired, you feel angry. This is, you feel regret. There's a lot here that is impacting our well-being. And I think this is confirmation that this topic is not just a sort of a flippant topic. And I think comparisonitis, the term, is sort of cute, but what sits under it is not. So to all, thank you for your honesty and thank you for sharing. And I hope that when we do something like a mentee like this in real time with all of you online, you get a sense that you're not alone. You get a sense that this is a universal experience to compare to others. And very often when we compare to others, it leaves us feeling these things which are impacting pretty significantly, it sounds like, for some of you, or maybe for all of you, our sense of well-being, which is not what we want. I think there's something relevant here too, Kate, and that's around when I see another person's success, it doesn't directly correlate with my ability to succeed. And that taps into growth mindset or versus scarcity. Now, a scarcity mindset would say, if someone else is kicking goals, then I cannot. As if there's a quota of goals to be kicked out there and they've been used up by someone else. Instead, a growth mindset will say, I can see my colleague or my friend or my peer or my partner or my neighbour or my flatmate, whatever, is doing really well, is being paid more than me, is getting their career is progressing, or they're getting a lot of validation, or perhaps they're even getting rewards in the way of freedom or flexibility or working from home days. And me, I just keep turning up, to turn the cogs of the wheel, and no one seems to be noticing. And I think here it's important to acknowledge that someone else's gain is not our loss. And instead to be thinking about what comes up for me when I see someone else's wins. What comes up for me? And to explore that with curiosity instead of a lens of competition. Because there's enough, if you have an abundant mindset, there's enough for all of us, and someone else's win is not our success. It's not our failure, I should say.
Sabina, and I think at this point it's important to place the beautiful overview that you've provided us of comparisonitis into the context of social media. So as we know, social media, whether it personal or professional platforms, has become an omnipresent force in our lives. So really does shape the way that individuals, and particularly younger people and early in careers, connect, share, and perceive themselves and others. So Ben, just throwing over to you now. You've been deeply involved in the social media industry for quite a while now. Are you able to speak to the value of these platforms like LinkedIn and how young professionals can make the most of them?
Yeah, absolutely. So my entire career, I have had some level of involvement with social platforms, either as competition when I was on the traditional media side and fighting for advertising dollars and justifying, why traditional media is so valuable, to where I am now, which is, I run one of the largest influencer marketing agencies across APAC. And so social is a big part of my life. And I've got 2 kids who are teenagers. So, that I can't escape it. What I would say is LinkedIn is a phenomenally great place to build a profile and to be known. And these days, I'd say in many professions, it's table stakes that you'd be expected to have some type of LinkedIn profile and keep that updated. And I'd say that's sort of a bare minimum. Where people have the most success on LinkedIn, and the advice I often give is, an acronym that I like to use, which is called ACA. So be active, curious, and add value. And I think if you think about that through the lens of LinkedIn, it doesn't mean you need to be posting thought leadership content and, spending hours crafting 500 words that, clever and witty and, show you off. It's more about just being in that environment, seeing how others are interacting, being curious about what others are talking about. And it could be as simple as just adding a comment sometimes on a post that's really inspired you or that you're intrigued to learn more about. And, just being like that can be incredibly valuable. And it's one of the first places any employer will go when they're looking at someone to be hired. And so it does make sense to, be active on there. But at the same time, you need to be mindful of the fact that, people will put their highlights there, not everything else that happens in their career. So.
Can I just also add to that, Ben? I saw something, I was about to say Hugh Grant. That's obviously where my mind is, thinking about my first crush from 30 years ago. But I meant Adam Grant, not Hugh Grant, whose work is fabulous in the organisational space. He's obviously a psychologist on the world stage. And he was talking about the difference between self-promotion, and let's look at this in the context of online as we're talking about, and comparisonitis. Self-promotion would be a post saying, hey, look at me, look what I've done, as opposed to what he called idea promotion, which is when you just seek to elevate an idea or a concept that you think is going to actually help or support others in some way. And when you look at it through that lens, it's an act of generosity. It's an act of sharing because you've got something worth sharing, which is very different to self-promotion. So just to add from, onto what you've just said there on your ACA acronym.
And I often see that those are the things that are most engaged with, right?
Yeah.
And it's also what the LinkedIn algorithm will preference. So the LinkedIn algorithm will take into consideration what's adding value to the community, and idea sharing adds tremendous more value, like a lot more value than what, hey, I just got a promotion, right? Like that's a pat on the back by your mates, and that quickly disappears from everyone's feed. But I've seen idea posts that go on for weeks where people are still commenting and coming back. And so I think you're bang on there, Sabina.
So you both have kind of spoken about the value that a platform like LinkedIn can add to a young professional's career and general development. Would you mind, Ben, just touching on some of the adverse effects that these platforms can bring?
Yeah, no problems. I think the first one, and probably an obvious one, is how much of a distraction it can be if you let it control too much of your day. There's LinkedIn alerts, just like every other social platform that has its alerts. The moment you get on your phone, you'll see, a count of some type of notice on your LinkedIn that you feel compelled to get in there and review. And so I think you really do need to be mindful of how much time you spend on it. And if you do feel like you're spending too much time on it, then maybe just, limit yourself to times of the day where you can afford to have that distraction. And That's particularly pertinent when you think about some roles that require like deep thinking and real strategic thought. You almost need to just turn off all alerts when you need to do that type of thinking. And so distraction's definitely one. The other one is just to be mindful of, you're not seeing 99% of actually what happens in that person's day. You're seeing the 1%, which is their highlight reel, and that in itself can get you to question, how you're doing and go down the comparisonitis route. And then the last one is it's really important not to think that these relationships or connections that you're making on social will come close to anything that you'd be doing in real life. And while I've made great connections on LinkedIn and have done business on LinkedIn, I can tell you from my own experience and career that the best relationships and the best opportunities and the best experiences I've had is when you build relationships with someone in real life and you progress through your career together with them, and you're there for each other. And IRL is, as far as I'm concerned, will kill social anytime, any day.
Thanks, Ben. Sabina, I'm keen to hear your views as a psychologist on what the impact of social media would be on young people's mental health, and specifically with regard to self-comparison.
Got a fly in my office, so sorry, I'm swishing a fly. So I guess we've talked already about comparisonitis and mental health correlations there, and they're really pretty similar in the social media space, because we know, as Ben said, we're looking at someone else's highlight reel and comparing that to our worst day. So you're going to come up feeling second best on your worst day. I always remember the book that my mum read me when I was a kid, Alexander and the No Good, Horrible, Very Bad Day, which, when his day just went from bad to worse. I think it became a movie. But if you're comparing your Alexander day to someone else's new shiny day on TikTok or LinkedIn or Insta, you're going to feel less than. So I think we know the comparisonitis piece just gets magnified on social media. But I don't want this to be a doom and gloom conversation around social media. I've already talked about sticking to your own yoga mat, but there's a time not to stick to your own yoga mat. And that is when you look at other people's content online on social media and you use it as I talked about before, use a lens of curiosity, not competition. I wonder how they've done that. Actually, before we get to I wonder how they've done that, why is it sparking something in you? Because when you have a significant emotional reaction to someone else's post, it's actually more about you than it is about them. I like to say that the world is our mirror. Our dog is our mirror. Our partner is our mirror. Our job is our mirror. The guy who's got grumpy with us in the traffic lights is our mirror. And by that, I mean that everyone is coming back to us, feeding us different information, but it's relevant or meaningful because of something that's happening for me. So if I see someone else's content that they've got a promotion and it stirs something pretty big in me, then there's something there for me to be curious and dig deeper about. Do I want a promotion? Do I think I'm deserving of a promotion? Have I gone for a promotion and not got one? Is someone not understanding me? Do I not feel worthy of a promotion? I don't know what it is for you, but be curious when something hits you hard in someone else's content or in any other part of life for that matter. It's the same thing. If you see, you might see a couple holding hands. This is not LinkedIn content, and it really gets to you. That's telling you something about what you're seeking or desiring or wanting in a relationship, whether you're in one or not. So I'm using a non-LinkedIn example, but the same sticks in whatever domain we're talking about. So knowing that someone else's content is triggering you is a good time to think about what's happening within me. What do I want more and less of? What are the barriers to moving towards that? What are the belief systems that are stopping me? But not just thinking, oh, screw them. because you're missing an opportunity there about what matters to you in this exchange and this experience.
Thanks, Sabina. So I guess you're kind of saying that sometimes we can use this as a tool for self-reflection. Would that be correct?
100%. And I don't know if any of you have read she's everywhere. Mel Robbins and her Let Them theory, which has taken the world by storm. And it's curious for me as a psychologist because let them, and for those who don't know their theory, it sounds like a hashtag let them. I'm going to try and let that fly, but it's driving me bonkers. But let them is part one, which is let the other person get the promotion or shine bright or know what they're doing or kick goals at work. That's let them. But the most important part that I take from Mel's theory, and she calls it a theory, I'm not sure it's really a theory, but not with, the scientific rigor, although what sits under it is a lot of psychological knowledge and history and research. But the part two of the theory is let me. And I think it's relevant to this conversation. So let them have their win. Let me now be curious about what I'm going to do with that. Am I going to go and speak to my boss? Am I going to try and get clarity around what I'm doing? Am I going to be kinder to myself? Am I going to come back to more of what my values are and why I'm in this job? Why did I sign up for this job in the first place? What was it about this industry or this course that I thought was going to be me? And it's so normal. I'm going to go off piste here, but it's so normal in our particularly early in our careers, but across the career lifespan to chop and change. Careers aren't linear. So I have mentored countless young people, and also, Ben, you mentioned you've got teenagers. Well, I've got two daughters. They're 22 and 24, so they are in the early career space. And I've seen countless people literally finish perhaps university degrees, work for 1 or 2 years, and then say, I don't want to do this. This isn't I didn't think, this is not what I signed up for. And, I think be open to that too. So you don't want to jump ship prematurely, but I know for sure that careers are not linear, and that when we don't explore our careers through an intrinsic lens of what matters to us and what we're driven towards, as opposed to doing it for another person. If you've chosen your career because you thought it would please mum or dad, or you thought it was going to earn you big bickies, or you thought you were going to pick up more dates, eventually this career is going to not fill you up. And when you're not filled up intrinsically, you're going to look at external markers for validation. And it's why the research around income is so fascinating, that our happiness level only raises to our happiness and our income raises correlations at the same time until a certain point when happiness plateaus. Happiness plateaus even if money continues to go up. So sometimes these external validators, and salary is one of them, can feel like what we think we need to be chasing, when actually it's the internal drivers that are going to sustain us more long term. Do you want to set a steak knives with that?
Sabina, you touched on it before. I think it's a really good point as well, though, is that you can use comparisonitis in a positive way.
Absolutely.
Right. And how can it inspire you to go, look, if that person is being successful and they have done, is there something they're doing that maybe I haven't thought of that could help me progress faster, if that's the area that I'm looking to improve in?
Yes. Right. Yes, Ben. I think that's my number one takeaway for this conversation, is to be curious about what do I want to do more and less of, in reflection on what I'm seeing out there. Yeah. And I'm with you on in real life. I mean, I am a very regular social media user on LinkedIn and on Instagram are my two main platforms that I use. And I've had what has started as online conversations that have become actually really meaningful in-person relationships, have become very meaningful work opportunities. Yeah. And it's not because I'm jumping up and down saying, pick me on the baseball bench. It's because I'm curious about what they're doing. I want to learn more. And I think people respond to that. And I also want to give a shout out to something that I'm involved in called Mentor Walks. You can check it out, mentorwalks.org, I think is the website. And it's in every city in Australia. We've now gone international as well. And you pay a nominal fee, I think it's $25 or something. You get paired up. It's for early to mid-career people. It's for women only. Sorry to the gents on the call. I'm sure there are other mentor opportunities for men as well, but this is a women. The tagline is "Good Women Supporting Good Women." And in Melbourne, we walk around the Tan once a month, and in other cities, different places. And you're assigned to a mentor, like yours truly. I'll get 2 to 3 mentees, and it's not an ongoing mentoring relationship. It's a one-night stand, if you like. So they bring a question, or they submit a question, and that question gets paired up with an appropriate mentor. And then we walk for an hour around the Tan. And what I notice in that exchange is that the other mentees have so much wisdom to share with each other, and they come away thinking, you know, the same topics come up every month. Imposter syndrome, we'll not talk about it in the terms of comparisonitis, but, you know, it's very common. Wondering how to make a move, how to have a conversation around salary, et cetera, what to do with social media, how to get a promote, blah, 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 all the issues that are relevant to all of us. And so that just highlights for me, as I said, the universality of this conversation, and also the importance of sharing both your hopes and strengths, as well as your vulnerabilities online, in real life, and on a mentee as well.
Thanks, Sabina. So you both have kind of touched on this idea of when you experience comparisonitis, you kind of flip it and you use it as a tool to reflect inwards and maybe think about how you want to conduct yourself going forward. We do know, though, that there are some perhaps more severe emotional effects of comparisonitis. Would you mind, Sabina, maybe just giving us some practical tips that young professionals can use if we're maybe not able to successfully flip that narrative?
Okay, here's another Sabinaism, and it's something I say: take your thoughts to court. Now, if you have the thought when you see, let's think of something, Kate, well, I'll make one up, but you see a colleague get a promotion or get an opportunity that you're not getting, and you tell yourself, remember I said our thoughts impact the way we feel impacts the way we behave. So your thought is, life's not fair, I'm not good enough, I'll never get a promotion. Your behavior is, your feelings are going to make you feel less than, and maybe even depressed or anxious or demotivated, and your behavior will follow suit. You won't put yourself forward, you won't give your work your best shot, etc. What we need to do when we have these kinds of unhelpful, faulty thoughts, and every single one of us has them, we all have about 60 to 70,000 thoughts a day, and a lot of them are going to be unhelpful or faulty. And by faulty, I don't mean sort of clinically faulty, I mean they lack evidence, they lack rigor. So if we can identify what that thought is that's tripping us up and pulling us back, and then take it to a metaphoric courtroom. And a metaphoric judge or jury would say, okay, Sabina, so you've said nothing ever goes your way. That's the thought you've brought into the courtroom. What's the evidence for that? Well, you know, I didn't get this promotion. That's the evidence. But then the judge or jury would say, well, it seems that you actually have progressed. You not got your way, but you progressed, or you moved towards your goals when you finished your university degree. You moved towards your goals when you had multiple job interviews and you're able to navigate those. You moved towards your goals when you were able to negotiate a package that was something that felt right for you at the time. You moved towards your goals when you signed up for professional development and learnt new skills. So, nothing ever goes your way. We can't let it stand up, kick you out of court. So I think that's probably one of the most helpful strategies. Take your own thoughts to court and look for the evidence. And often you'll find that the thought that's dominating your experience and bringing you down and leading you to this place of depletion or procrastination or negative self-talk is lacking in evidence and taking your thoughts to court, I think, helps you provide a more balanced view. Of course, if something's more, there was some things on that mentee around anxiety and depression, body dysmorphia. There's some more significant clinical impacts for some of us. And if that's the case, I think it goes without saying to be in contact with your GP, to speak to a psychologist, to follow up your EAP if your employer has an employee assistance program, but also to talk to friends or to share what's happening for you and get a third-party professional opinion. Don't let it go if it's really, when I talk about clinical sort of diagnoses, I would say if they are impacting your day-to-day life, your capacity to work, your capacity to live, your capacity to be in a relationship or earn money, or your capacity for joy and fun, of which I'm pretty clear are very high on my list, and I think they need to be for all of us, then it's worth exploring further and not just putting up with it or not thinking that this is how life should be or how work should be. And we do work for a third of our lives. A third of our lives are spent working. So let's find work that, elevates us and elevates others and creates impact and growth, as well as the more mundane stuff that comes along with every job.
Thanks, Sabina. I actually am going to court this afternoon, so I will get the chance to take my thoughts to court in the literal sense.
Well, for the non-lawyers online, we can all take our thoughts to court.
Ben, I might just throw over to you now. As young professionals, I feel like we kind of have this need to be very polished and professional on platforms like LinkedIn, but I know sometimes there can be a real benefit in being authentic and genuine. How would you suggest that we balance those two competing ideas?
Yeah, well, to start with, I don't know if they have to be competing ideas. I think authentic and genuine can be a very professional thing to be, and it will benefit you throughout your career. I think there's sometimes like words are misused with authenticity and maybe oversharing and things like that. So what I always advise is, like, if it was your future self or a future employee or client or colleague was to read anything that you're writing on those social platforms, where like, would you be okay with that? And that's probably, and authentic, if you're authentic and genuine, they should always be okay with that. That's not something you should feel uncomfortable being, and it's actually when people can feel like they can most connect with you is when you're feeling like you're authentic. And so I think that there's probably just a mindset shift with how you think about that stuff. And like that's really the message for me. There is just it's not a one or the other. It's actually both, and you'll benefit from being authentic and genuine. And that's where people most engage with content online. Like, you'll see the post and you go, wow, that person's spoken in a way that I can so relate to that, and they haven't tried to polish it in a way that feels like it's not real.
Yeah.
And you can still be professional and authentic. The polishing part, I would say, is the least of your worries with that sort of stuff. You want to attract people into your life that will appreciate you for who you are, not for who you try to be online. And the people that want to engage with you and work with you or be your clients will be those ones that genuinely feel like they've got a connection with you. Like, this is something I say to my sales guys all the time. People don't want to be sold to, but they want to go shopping with their friends, right? And it's that genuine connection that you make with people that will progress you throughout your career. The ones that I've had relationships with for 25 years are the ones that I'm most genuine and authentic with.
Yeah. I agree with that, Ben. And also, it's easy when you're in the early stages of your career to be thinking, I have to look like I know everything and I have to have all the answers and the solutions. If you're 5 years into your career, you're not going to have, well, no one's got all the solutions and all the answers, no matter what age or stage they're at. But, meet yourself where you are. Don't pretend to be someone you're not. It's clear that you're 2 or 3 years out of uni, that you're in your early stages of your career. So you don't need to present yourself like, the CEO of the world. That's not where you're at. And I think you'll find, as Ben says, more of a conversation or more connection and exchange when you share what's authentic, which is that you're in your early stages of your career. And some of that might be around, that's not a place to dump your deep, dark stuff, but some kind of exchange around, or some kind of sharing around uncertainty, or, that sometimes has its place, in my opinion, because that's not your shiny, that's not the shiny reel. And people lean into that because they're like, yeah, me too. And for me, that's probably, connection's my number one value. And I think when we feel a sense of connection when all parties share some vulnerability, and whether you're the CEO or in your first year of your working career, we all are vulnerable, and pretending we're not is bullshit.
I feel like that's shifted as well. Like if I look at the time and period that I've looked at social platforms and everything they do, I think earlier on in the social platforms, it was all about, having this pristine look to you. And I think it's changed over the last few years. I've definitely seen, and I think, I'll tip my hat to TikTok for this. I think TikTok has done an incredible job of creating a platform where authenticity will overpower pristine every time in everyone's feed. And it's allowed people to feel like they can be themselves on that platform and find their community. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the same thing here. When you're early on in your career, you're looking to find those connections with people who have the same mindset as you, similar sort of values, and you can only find that by being authentic.
Yeah. And I would also say we are what we eat. We all know that saying for our physical bodies, but it's the same with our online diet. And so if you're following on TikTok, it's all maths, that's what you're going to be thinking about. But if you're following content that helps you think and grow, like Adam Grant's a great one to follow, in my opinion, then, of course, as we know, the algorithms will find more of that. So I think it's really important what you spend your time dining out on in the online restaurants of the world, so to speak.
Thanks, Sabina. So it's a lot about the type of content you're consuming online as well.
Yeah, there's really good content out there. I was the brand ambassador with Seek for 7 years, and really in that job I was a content creator. In many ways I am a content creator, even though I'm a psychologist. And there's excellent content. I'm not with them now. This is not, I'm not getting a clip or a card or anything. There's excellent content on Seek's website that I think a lot of people don't know about. People think that's where you've got to look for a job, but they've got a whole tab on career advice, and they've got blogs and videos and how to put your CVs together and how to ask for a pay rise, promotion. There's so many resources out there that are worth discussing with other people, instead of doing in your own little lunchbox thinking you're the only one who's navigating these hurdles, because I can tell you 100% for sure you are not, and you will never be, because it's a very human experience to explore self, to have self-doubt, but also to have these drives around, as I said, mastery and purpose and agency and autonomy. So, hey, welcome. We're all in this pot together.
Yeah. And look, I think TikTok does a great job of that again, where if you're in a profession, I would be amazed if there isn't someone who's early in their career that's creating TikTok content around your profession and being really authentic about it. And you will find that if you search for it on there, and all of a sudden you'll also find your people. And, often the comment section is the most active part of TikTok, and it can be really interesting and really engaging. And even if you're just viewing it all and not actively participating while you get comfortable with it, that's also okay, because you're learning and you're growing and experiencing those things.
Ruth, we actually just have a question in the chat further to this. Do either of you have any strategies that you can employ when someone else is reinforcing the comparison, as opposed to someone online that you may not know? For example, a friend, a family member.
Yeah. So I'm going to just assume, well, let's take, for example, a parent or a partner, someone who you're pretty close to is probably going to be this person who's saying, you can see Jane's doing it. Why aren't you doing it? Or why haven't you got there? I think the first thing to that is to say, like kill people with kindness, I guess, in the sense that I think you're sharing that with me because you care, but I'm not finding that helpful. Or help me understand what you were hoping might shift by sharing that with me. That'd be a good question to ask them. I like the start of help me understand, because it shares that I don't have the answers either here, but help me understand what's important for you about that, and let them express why they're bringing that up. And if it's someone in your inner circle, it could be that they have a sense of fear for you, but more than likely they're also reflecting on their own vulnerabilities. Or it's so common for a parent particularly, or an older person or a boss or whatever, to be thinking, well, when I was 23 I was doing blah blah. And so they're looking at your career and your life through their own 23, 24, 25, 26-year-old lens. Not helpful. That was in the 80s and this is now. So it doesn't help to shut someone down immediately, because it's better to explore what their motivation is for sharing it with you, and then to create a boundary around it if you're finding it unhelpful.
I think also, Sabina, like to build on you are what you eat and you are what you consume. You are also the people you hang around with, right? And so, there's lots of research out there, and Sabina can probably talk to it better than I, but, the 5 people that you spend the most time with in your life, in your day, in your week, are the people you're most likely to become like. And so I would be looking for people who you want to hang around with, who want to build you up and who want to encourage you. And you might not have a choice in the matter if it's a parent. So I totally get that. But then you've still got 3 others that you can hang around and choose to be close with, who can really support you and understand you and find ways to help you not make those negative comparisons and those types of things.
And I know we're out of time. I'm going to share a personal anecdote that's just popped into my head. I couldn't agree more with you, Ben. The people we spend time with are those that, that's where I see this comparisonitis as being a positive. I spend time in the orbit of a lot of people that are extraordinary. I think they are phenomenal. They are thought leaders. They are smart. They are savvy. They are successful. I could be looking at them thinking, I don't belong here, or what would I know? Or even when I turn up at mentor walks, the caliber of other mentors, I could be thinking, what am I doing here? I'm not them, whatever. And 2 of my dearest friends who are absolute superstars in their own respective careers, we do spend a lot of time sharing our successes and also our vulnerabilities. And the other day we talked about what would it be like if we're on WhatsApp chat, the 3 of us. We wanted to print our WhatsApp chat and turn it into wallpaper to share the kinds of exchanges that 3 women in their 50s who are kicking goals, how we're talking to each other and how much vulnerability we share, but also how much championing we do. So if you're interested in, we call it the Queen's Wallpaper range. If you're interested in it, we haven't made it yet, but that's just an example of how turning comparisonitis, they make me, I'm going to sound like I'm in a 80s rom-com, but they make me want to be a better person. And that's the potential of comparisonitis for good, not evil.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And to just build on your business idea, Sabina, you need to make sure you upload that WhatsApp chat into ChatGPT, get it to summarize it for you, and then you could turn it into some really great content.
Yeah. Well, content, I don't know why we thought wallpaper was it. But there's probably more appropriate forums for our exchanges than wallpaper. But we like the idea of people sitting in their pretty powder rooms being inspired.
I love that. Yeah.
So there's also scope for humour and levity in this conversation too. And so often we think, oh God, this is depleting and frustrating, and it's a long game, this career story. It's a long game. So buckle in. Find good people to walk alongside and get ready to ride the highs and lows. It's not just as I said, you don't turn 30 and it all turns, perfect.
Yeah.
Thanks, Sabina. And someone in the chat actually made the comment that they've made the decision to spend time with people who fill their cup. And I think that's a really great way to visualize it instead of people who empty your cup.
Yeah. Yeah. So notice what's your energy doing in the presence of some people. And if you find that every time you leave them, you're depleted, then there's information there to take notice of as well.
Yeah. And the people closest to you will give you, like, good people will give you their energy. Right. And that's the greatest exchange, I think.
100%. Team, I'm aware we're running out of time, but you both have such great insight. So I think there might be one more question we can do. Someone in the chat has just asked whether there's a role for gratitude in combating comparisonitis.
Yes. Hell yes, I say. What do you think, Ben?
100% every day. Without a doubt. I think that's a little dinner time trick that we'll go around the table with in the family and just go, what's something that you're really grateful for that happened today, right? And I think when you focus on the things that are really great in your life, you'll realize that the things that you think you might be beating yourself up on aren't really as bad as you might first think. Because
I think, of course, three good things is a tried and tested positive psychology strategy. But what about self gratitude and saying thank you for noticing that someone else's post has triggered me in some way? Thank you, me. Thank you to Sabina. Thank you for noticing that. Let's deep dive that a bit further to better understand why it's triggered us metaphorically, me and what me and me can do about it, because I'm a great believer in collaboration and support and championing others, but I also think we have a sense of agency greater than we know about our capacity to drive and change our careers and our lives.
Thanks, both. I'm just having a look at the time, so I think we might just need to start wrapping up now. Thank you both so much for your time and contribution to today's event. I'm just going to get up the QR code for those who are interested in joining the Early in Careers Network. You can just scan the code. If you have any feedback, please also feel free to use the QR code, which will take you to a feedback form. And also keep an eye out for videos and content related to this webinar. I believe the whole thing's recorded. So if you feel the need to come back to these amazing insights, you will definitely be able to. And finally, to find out more or to get involved with the Corporate Mental Health Alliance, the Thriving from the Start Network, or the EIC, please visit our website. Thank you so much all for joining today, and I hope you took away some very valuable learnings.